Let's talk about how to actually do department audits for efficiency, waste, and streamlining. So this is the budget that I had, or actually this was the annual spend for the year before I took over a department. So as you can see, I've got a calculator. I took over a department that had an annual spend of about $4.73 million. So that was year zero. So year zero was $4.73 million. Because the market in my industry is down, we are not selling as many units, and so our conversion cost is increasing, which means it's costing us more money per unit to make our product. We have got to bring our costs down in order to be more efficient, in order to keep the product that we are making for the orders that we are getting at a competitive price. The first thing that I did when I came into this department is I took about 3 months to observe every day the operations of the department. I spent time with every single person that worked in the department, and then in every single office in the department, and then actually going with the people in every single department to do the tasks that they do on a day-to-day basis. And something that you really need to understand is there's this thing called the Pareto principle. And that is, it's a 20-80 rule. And that typically means about 20% of your people do about 80% of your work. In reviewing all the departments, reviewing everything going on in this spend, I was able to determine that we could completely restructure this group, which was about 20 people. And we had 2 people that were able to maybe be of retirement age or move on. And then we had a couple of people who were underperformers. And so they were able to be placed with a different contract for the vendor that we use. So they were no longer at our site. And then I was actually able to look at all the jobs that they do and all of the things that are required to be done under this contract. And I was able to restructure them from about, I don't know, 750 hours a week worth of contract work down to about 520 hours a week worth of contract work. All in all, that contract over the course of a year, instead of $1.8 million, is actually going forward only going to cost about $750,000. That is going to be a savings of about $1 million. And that was by completely just restructuring. I did not cut any services. I'm still going to get everything out of that contract that I was getting before. It just cut out a lot of overtime and a lot of redundancy. Then I looked at this contract, which is worth about $600,000 a year. And what I found out was the contract was for certain days of the week, which didn't align with the operations at the facility. So by renegotiating that contract to align the hours of these staff with the production operations that I have to oversee, I was actually able to cut out 52 12-hour overtime shifts. And so that is going to reduce that contract without cutting any services and without impacting any operations in our facility. And then I had about $600,000 in salary for the people in my department that are direct employees. And so one of those people found another career opportunity before I even started doing this. And I was able to then look at the people that I had left in the department and able to identify a lower seniority employee that has potential and is very eager to learn and is very loyal and very dedicated. And so I am now able to train that employee to take over some higher level duties, and I'm able to function with one fewer person. And so that is going to cut about $100,000 off of that part of my budget. And then I have an oversight contract for medical oversight for my medical staff. I don't need that person 5 days a week because on one day a week, there isn't really anything for them to do. So I'm able to reduce that contract by renegotiating from 5 days a week to 4 days a week. So that is going to reduce that contract down to about $96,000 from $130,000. The other thing that I get out of this contract is there are a lot of HR functions that require medical input, and the HR department pays for those services separately. Since this person is a licensed medical practitioner, I'm actually able to shift some of those tasks to this person that the HR department has to contract for separately. And so it's not really saving me and my department, but it's saving our entire facility a few $100,000 by having those tasks done by somebody that's already on our site. And he can do those tasks as filler in between seeing employees that need to be, maybe released back to work, or maybe have been out on some kind of leave and they have to have a physical before they come back to work. And then this contract here, this was a vendor contract, and it was about $400,000 of spend the year before, and it just wasn't being managed very well. And so what happened there is was able to renegotiate that contract and split it into an inspection contract and a repair contract. And so the inspection contract is going to be a fixed cost of like $50,000 or $60,000 a year. And the repair contract is they have to have the work orders approved in-house by our in-house maintenance and engineering team. And we have maintenance people on staff that can do a lot of this work. So before this contractor is given that work, it's evaluated to see if it can be done in-house by employees who are already getting paid to be there. So it's no extra cost on top of the labor cost that we already have. And then this consumable equipment contract, well, it's multiple contracts, but consumable equipment for $1.2 million is we had a couple of different contracts that had exclusivity clauses in them. And so we could only buy these certain consumables from those vendors. And those vendors have significantly higher unit price than other vendors that have similar products, comparable products available on the market. So by renegotiating these contracts to get rid of the exclusivity clauses, we are able then to go out and competitively bid for other consumables. And so what I ended up being able to do is I was able to cut this contract down to about $750K. This contract is going down to about $450K. This went down to about $475K. This is going down to $96K. This is going down to $50K plus. I'm not sure what the full will be on that one because it depends on what needs repaired during the year. And then I can estimate that I'm actually going to be able to get this one down to about $750K just by going out for competitive bids on contracts. So the other thing is, in this staff, I did go from about 21 people down to 14 or 15 people. So like I said, I had 2 people that were eligible for retirement, decided to take it. I had 2 or 3 people that actually had other job offers and they decided to take those. And then we had 2 or 3 people that were low performers, and the vendor that provides us those services had other places that those individuals could go and possibly be successful under a different type of job with different types of obligations, responsibilities, and duties. They just weren't a good fit for the very active requirements of working in this production operation. So I got my calculator here once again. The actual budgeted amount after all of these cuts is going to be about $2.6 million. But the thing is, the most important thing when you're doing something like this is you can't just take a chainsaw on day one and start cutting people and cutting services and cutting activities. You have to look at the operation, you have to look at the people, you have to look at the requirements, like what needs to be done, because like some of these inspections are on fire protection systems and those need to be functioning. You can't cut emergency services, you can't cut inspections on emergency response systems. So you have to take a scalpel to this, not a chainsaw. But just by renegotiating contracts, being efficient, changing work schedules, and then yes, you might have to, convince some people to find happiness in other places because maybe they're not a good fit for the operation. Maybe they are ready to retire. But cutting people shouldn't be your first step. Your first step needs to be doing a deep dive into the operations and the needs of the department or the group or the organization or the system and figuring out what is absolutely necessary. And then how can we renegotiate contracts or how can we redesign work groups, redesign people, redesign facilities to make it the most efficient and cut out waste. And then the other thing that I would say with that is, I keep hearing all of this waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, none of the expenses in here were fraudulent. None of them were abuse. They were just people were doing the job that was done, that was assigned to them, and they were paying the bills as they came in. And so, just like with our Congress right now, they are the ones that are responsible for developing the budget. And then they decide what agencies get what money and how much money and when they get that money. And they tell the agencies, this is the priorities of Congress and this is what we want you to spend it on. So as long as the agencies are spending the money where Congress tells them to spend it according to the bills that are passed in Congress, it's not fraud and it's not abuse. Now, if you don't agree with it, you might be able to say it's wasteful. And if you can be more efficient with the money, then yeah, maybe there's some waste there. But just because you don't like where money's being spent doesn't make it fraud or abuse. It doesn't even make it waste. But you have to understand how the operations work, and you have to understand how the system works, how funding gets approved, how funding gets distributed. You need to understand those things before you just start calling stuff waste, fraud, and abuse.